With the withdrawal of all American troops from Afghanistan now expected to be complete about a month earlier instead of September 11th, by August end, the overarching question is how and to what extent Washington will remain militarily engaged with Kabul. Eric Schmitt of the New York Times reports that one way the US military will help is via teleconference. In a sense, we might see the emergence of the idea of zooming a war or phoning it in, as it were. Add to that the armed drones, which have been used for a long time and often to a devastating collateral damage, and you have all the makings of a long distance war. This is as the Taliban goes on gobbling up district after district. They already control about 70 out of the total of 421 and eventually train their guns on Kabul. Things are beginning to look dire. In the last 24 hours or so, more than 13 districts are reported to have fallen to the Taliban onslaught. The tired cliché of history repeating itself does not seem to have tired much in Afghanistan. 2 decades after the US ran out the Taliban is now running out the US, in a manner of speaking. Are we going to witness the emergence of Talibanistan? We don't know yet, but it is not altogether inconceivable. Three external players are crucial here: Pakistan, India, and China. All three have significant geostrategic stakes there. Islamabad naturally more than New Delhi and Beijing, but India is not that far behind. For Beijing, though, it's a bigger, newer game to control a mineral rich country. For Pakistan, the challenge is direct and existential since the Taliban no longer listen to their progenitors in any serious way. For President Joe Biden, who turned out to be the man to bring the troops home, unlike his three immediate predecessors, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, and George W. Bush, this is such a dichotomous sell. On the one hand, he has to convince the Americans that he's the one ending forever wars, but on the other, he has also to convince Afghanistan that he still has their back. It is like not wanting your war and having it too. Mayank Chai report spoke to Anwar Iqbal, a well known Pakistani journalist who is the Dawn newspaper's Washington correspondent. A seasoned chronicler of Afghanistan over decades, Anwar is also a senior policy analyst. Here is Anwar Iqbal. What is the new great game that is unfolding in Afghanistan with the US leaving?
Well, actually, it is new and not new. I mean, the newer you get, the older you are. Afghanistan, I remember uh, Hillary Clinton when she took up as Secretary of State during one of her very early hearings on the Hill. Somebody asked her, one of the congressmen, that this has been Afghanistan's history. That Alexander came and he got so vexed with the resistance that he received in that country that he told his generals to leave them alone. And then, I mean, various empires and rulers and Muslims and non-Muslims and British and Russians all tried and all failed to subdue that area and finally had to withdraw. So why would you be different?
Right.
And she said that we would be different because we are not there to occupy it. We are going with two particular purposes. One is to uproot Al Qaeda and make Afghanistan and prevent future militant attacks on the United States from Afghanistan. That was our first purpose. And the other was, she said, that people of Afghanistan also need modernization, democracy, development, and everything. And we are going to help them do that. We're not going to sit there forever. We'll be there for a year or two, and then we will withdraw and we will help them develop their country. But I mean, no matter how noble her desires were, this is not how it happened.
Right.
And those who knew Afghanistan, I remember I was at UPI in those days, and the Pentagon sent a colonel who not only briefed us, but like he stayed in our newsroom for a few days to tell us, what actually is going to happen, and how we should actually treat the story. And during one of the discussions, our then editor John O'Sullivan also asked me to say something. And this was after that colonel actually showed us a map of how the United States is going to stabilize Afghanistan. And I got up and I said that apparently you have already made the mistake that everybody makes. He said, what's that? I said, look, whenever you want to take over Afghanistan militarily, the easiest option is Kabul, because Kabul is where the influence of the Pashtun wane and the non-Pashtuns take over. And then all the provinces beyond Kabul are mostly dominated by non-Pashtuns. You have Panshiris, you have Tajiks, you have other, Panshiris are also Tajik, Uzbeks, and all others forces in Kabul and beyond Kabul. And although Pashtun is the largest ethnic group, but these other groups, Hazaras and all, they have always had, throughout history, have had problems with the Pashtun, and they cooperate with whoever comes from outside, and that's why Kabul falls immediately. And after that, Pashtuns start retreating and go back to their own provinces, and then begin their resistance. Even in Kabul, there are places like Khair and other Pashtun pockets. Like if you go beyond Pule Khishti Mosque, you see totally different world. I mean, on this side of Pule Khishti, where Sharon now is, where other non-Pashtun areas are, you see development, you see a totally different approach. But on the other side of Pule Khishti, it is different. So you made the same mistake. You are going in with non-Pashtun forces, which will annoy the Pashtuns, and then they will start fighting you. And unfortunately, Americans did not learn from the mistakes made by others, and this was bound to happen.
Right.
Obviously, this time, Pakistan played a role because Pakistan felt that it will be better protected by the Pashtuns who are pro-Pakistan, and therefore they continued supporting the Taliban. But even without Pakistan's support, when the British were ruling over India, remember, Pashtuns were still able to sustain and actually push the British back. This is
Right.
Afghanistan's history.
Right. Before I come to the specifics, for the benefit of my viewers, would you care to describe the ethnic constitution of the Taliban? You mentioned so many different ethnicities earlier. What does the Taliban
Mainly
mainly
Pashtun.
consist of?
Mainly Pashtun, and
Okay.
Pashtun too from Kandahar. And Kandahar is one region which has always produced major Pashtun leaders, including kings and emperors. I mean, Abdali, the father of the nation, and the one who is Nikkei Baba, the one before him. These are the two national heroes that all Afghanistan recognize. They are also from Kandahar. And then there are Pashtuns from Sharqi Afghanistan, which is the eastern Afghanistan. There are Pashtuns. First, in the north, Taliban have always had a strong pocket in Kunduz, which is again is the only Pashtun pocket in the north.
Right.
So, but they do have support from some support now. They have developed some support among the Tajiks. They have probably have no support in the Hazara areas, because Hazaras are Shias and they identify themselves with Iran, and they do not have much of a support, or at least very little support among the Uzbeks, who again get support from two very interesting sources. I mean, Turkey is a very strong Pakistani ally. They cooperate with each other on everything. But when it comes to General Dostum and Uzbeks and Afghanistan, Turkey always supports them because they are seen as Turks. And of course, Uzbekistan supports them. Similarly, the Hazaras get support from Iran, Tajiks get support from Tajikistan and from India. And there are other ethnic groups that because of throughout history, they have been getting support from India. There are groups that get support from Pakistan, obviously. So Afghanistan is such that throughout Afghan history, countries around Afghanistan have never left that country alone because they feel threatened. And they, all the countries that are around Afghanistan, Central Asians, Iran, Pakistan, India, it does not have border, but it does feel that it is in its interest to protect, to have supporters in Afghanistan. So they always stay involved there, and that's why I've always believed there can never be peace in Afghanistan, no matter what the Americans say or do, unless and until there is some understanding among Afghanistan's neighbors, not immediate neighbors and distant neighbors, uh, uh, and they until and unless they agree that they will not interfere and they will let the Afghanistan uh, develop their to build a strong
Right.
state. Unless this understanding is there, Afghanistan is not going anywhere.
But again, I've always been rather intrigued and confused both about the nature of the so called threat that these neighbors feel from Afghanistan. It's not a country with any economic might, it's not a country with any military might. It's just a ragtag band of tribes which are very proud of their own connections. What exactly does that threat mean when you describe Afghanistan posing a threat to these neighborhood, or at least in their perception, they see it as a threat?
History. I mean, there are obviously there are more Pashtuns in Pakistan than there are in Afghanistan. There was a time when Peshawar used to be the largest Pashtun city, but it is not even Peshawar now. Now it is Karachi. It is the largest Pashtun city in the world.
Yeah.
So, and there are, I think, almost twice as many Pashtuns in Pakistan as there are in Afghanistan. So obviously, whatever happens in Afghanistan has a direct impact on Afghanistan, and whatever happens in the adjoining areas of Pakistan has a direct impact on Afghanistan. See, go back to the Fakir Ipi movement, go back to the Sayyid Ahmad Shahid movement that started in Delhi, but ultimately prospered and then also was defeated by the Pashtun tribes in the tribal areas, or even before that, it was always sort of all started, if not started, they got support from those regions, and therefore Pakistan feels threatened that anything that happens in the area will have its impact on it. I mean, see, I'll give you one an example which is apparently not related, but is still very related. If you talk to Pakistanis from Karachi up to Attak, one thing they'll say, the Pashtuns are strange. Why are they strange? They do not even celebrate Eid with us. The whole of the country will celebrate Eid on this day, and they will celebrate Eid on the other day. Now, there is a reason for that. The reason is that historically, they have been celebrating Eid with Kabul. Okay? Although now there are more Pashtuns in Pakistan, but they actually, what they do is they wait for news from Kabul. If Kabul confirms that today is Eid, they observe Eid, otherwise, they do not observe it. So the influence on each other is so strong. In Kabul, I mean, you see, when I was there in 1989, and we were sitting there, and suddenly everybody wanted. I mean, we were at Kabul hotel. All the waiters and people working, they wanted to leave, and I asked one of them why. He said, "Oh, food has arrived from Pakistan." What food? Relief or aid? I said, "No, no, no. I mean, food to buy. It comes from Pakistan. So when it comes to, we have to buy it." So they all got leave to go and buy food from Pakistan. You see,
Okay.
because those are actually, of course, they are Pakistan, and the majority of Pashtuns in Pakistan want to remain in Pakistan. The secessionist movement in Pakistani Pashtun is very weak, but at the same time, these were actually the wheat producing and the food producing area of the Pashtun lands. and therefore, of course, we have created a border on there, but that does not change historic fact, you
Right.
know.
Right.
I mean, a lot of things. I mean, up to Pashtuns have a history of mm, migrating into India. I mean, Indian subcontinent is a land where they look down upon because they see themselves as white people, as Aryan people, very proud of their Aryan heritage, and they treat all South Asians, Indians and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis as non-Aryans, non-white. Okay.
Right.
At the same time, they have had such a long relationship with the subcontinent that they cannot live without it. So we have been so involved. It is
Yeah.
so confusing and so interconnected that it
Right.
will continue to, have an impact on us.
With the US departing, China is already swooping down with billions, especially through their Belt and Road Initiative in Afghanistan. I'm sure wouldn't mind it. Do you think that China is emerging as possibly the new dominant player in Afghanistan?
No, dominant. You can say that China would like to be a larger player than it is, but China cannot be a dominant player in Afghanistan. China could become more dominant than India or Pakistan, but Chinese are very smart people. They will not get militarily involved because they know the consequences, and they would try what India tried, which is investment and contacts with various groups and working with them in development and everything. Because the Chinese actually aim is which is actually is also Pakistan's and India's aim, but all these two countries at least put their individual interests before regional interests, and that's why it never happens. Which is to have an access to Central Asia, okay, which if it happens, whenever it happens, it will bring so much benefit to all that it can actually stop the war in Afghanistan and force these countries to look at the benefits of having an access to Central Asia. So Chinese would also want that, but Chinese I think will go with low expectations. They will not even want an immediate reopening of routes to South Asia, to Central Asia, and everything. First, they would like to have relations with whosoever is in power, and they will move gradually using, I think, money as their main source of influence.
Right. What is Pakistan's particular worry about the Taliban resurgence and perhaps eventually even taking over Kabul? Because
My
Taliban has had fairly strong fraternal ties historically with Pakistan. So why this shift?
my understanding is that Pakistanis uh, believed, like everybody believed about the Russians before 1989. I mean, the Americans, the Pakistanis, the Saudis, they all brought all these mad men from all over the Muslim world to fight the jihad in Afghanistan because nobody actually thought the Soviet Union will collapse.
Right.
The idea was that this uh, war will go on for many, many years. In the process, the Soviet Union will weaken. It will weaken the Soviet Union. And also all these militants will get killed, and it will be a win-win situation for us. We'll get rid of the militants too, and we'll be able to reduce Russian influence. But the Soviet Union decided to quit and then collapsed.
Right.
Similarly, Pakistanis thought that yes, the Taliban will bring pressure on the Americans, and the Americans will sit down and they find some sort of midway, and in which we will also play a role. But the Americans are not going to leave so soon. I mean, like the way Trump announced a date, and then also Biden actually just delayed it just for a few months.
Right.
That surprised Pakistanis too. They were not prepared for it. Now, what will happen if you have a Taliban rule in Kabul? What will happen is the immediate impact would be strengthening the Pakistani Taliban. You see, no matter what the Taliban say, they the Taliban leaders have a very strong I mean, they studied in their founders and all. They studied in madrasas in Pakistan. They always respected these religious scholars. I mean, again, this goes back to history. It's very interesting. Why these religious people? I mean, the
Right.
Deobandis, they are the followers of Deobandi sect.
True.
They are the dominant group in Pashtun areas and in Afghanistan, and they mainly are based in their madrasas are in Pakistan, but a lot of Pashtuns come and study there. You'll be surprised. I mean, the reason is so simple. The madrasa is in Deoband, in India. Okay, and in and around Deoband, there are lots of Pashtun villages who came and settled centuries ago. So when people and they are in the villages, they still have these Pashtun style houses where you have one Mardana and one Zanana, and Mardana is totally segregated from Zanana. There is no access or nothing. So they used to, when the Pashtun students used to come, they used to give them shelter and food,
Hmm.
and therefore they started coming in large numbers. And because of that, more Pashtuns came, and the Deobandi influence spread in Afghanistan and
I
Pashtun
see.
areas of
Yeah.
Pakistan.
Yeah.
So so they have these links with the Deobandi madrasas in Pakistan, and that means militancy in Pakistan will also increase considerably.
I see.
And the Pakistani establishment is basically a British trained establishment. It's still like in India, to get good promotion, you need to speak good English. You proudly send your officers for training to the United States, or at least used to until recently, and still want to. They admire Britain, they admire America, and all those things, and they see themselves. I mean, there, if in Pakistan, even under Ziaul Haq, now of course the restrictions have relaxed. Under Ziaul Haq, they had closed all the swimming pools for women everywhere
Yeah.
across except in the cantonments. Okay,
Right.
cantonments were the only areas where you had not only swimming pools for women, but mixed swimming pools where women and men could swim together. Okay, so that is the culture of the Pakistani military. Now they do want Taliban to succeed in Afghanistan to an extent, but they do not want the same thing happening in Pakistan.
Right. Right. Okay. Do you envisage a civil war like Prime Minister Imran Khan seems to have suggested that it could easily degenerate into a civil war?
If not stopped, yes, yes.
I see. And who is going to stop it?
There is neighboring countries, nobody else,
Okay.
particularly India and Pakistan. There
Okay.
has to be an understanding between these two countries. They have to assure each other. India has to assure Pakistan that no matter what, people in Afghanistan will not be sent to KP and Balochistan for studying troubles. And Pakistan has to assure India that no matter what, people trained in Afghanistan will not be used in the jihad in Kashmir.
Right.
Okay, there'll be no interference. We
Yeah.
will strictly maintain this thing that whatever happens in Afghanistan remains in Afghanistan. If they do not reach this understanding,
Yeah.
it will be the situation will get
Yeah, it's interesting you should
worse.
mention Kashmir because my sense from talking to people in Delhi, even someone of the caliber of Tarun Basu wrote a piece that suggested that part of the reason that you see some positive movement between India and Pakistan over Kashmir is the Modi government is also focused on what's going on in Afghanistan and its spillover that can happen in Kashmir. So there is a broader connection here, right?
See, obviously, if you have militants in Afghanistan, it is very easy to reach Afghanistan from Kashmir, even if unless there is really a greater understanding
Right.
from between India and Pakistan. I mean, you can reach Kashmir used to be an Afghan province. And they didn't go through India; they went through the northern areas.
Right.
It's not very the bordering Afghan province of Badakhshan. I mean, I also used to of Badakhshan because we in Urdu literature and all we read a lot about Badakhshan, Lale Badakhshan, and it is very beautiful, no doubt.
Right.
So, and I used to think it is like Kohe Qaf or Kohe Qaf ki Pariyan or all these things. This is like thousands of miles away. So once with the Pakistani foreign minister, we went on a helicopter from Islamabad. And even on a helicopter, we were there in 1.5 hours or something. Just flew from Islamabad, crossed the mountains, and there we were in Badakhshan. You
I
see,
see.
it's so close. So people used to, and still do, militants can easily just walk into Pakistani zone areas and then walk into Afghanistan. So that is why both sides need to have an understanding.
Right. Right. The Taliban has already said that any foreign troops beyond the September 11th deadline will be at risk. Now, that's a rather presumptuous statement to make, but in their mind, they already are in control of Afghanistan, it seems. What is your sense of that?
See, again, Afghanistan, if you look at Afghanistan, the attitude of the Afghans towards foreign presence on their land, the Taliban are right. Once the Americans leave, those who are stayed behind will become an easy target, not just for the Taliban, but for all Afghans.
Right.
And Afghans are so suspicious of unwanted presence that during the Afghan war against the Soviets, when they used to take journalists inside, I also went 2 or 3 times with Western journalists, and we would be stuck in a village waiting for permission from the next tribal area because we were with one tribe. So then waiting for permission from the next tribal chief, and we would be stuck for days. And so once I asked one of them, I said, well, why? I mean, both of you belong to the same parties. I said, yes, but that is his area.
I see.
We cannot go just like that. We have to seek his permission. So, and they were like, just neighboring tribes. But
Right.
you wouldn't go because if you did, they will open fire on you.
Okay. More than 1,000 Afghan soldiers have fled to Tajikistan. At the same time, there are reports that Taliban has already gained control of the lucrative income tax, etc., along the main trade gateway. Uh, do you think, I mean, they are also collecting custom revenues, it seems. So they are positioning themselves rather well. What do you think this kind of planning does for the future of Kabul at this stage?
Again, Mike, the Americans made a huge mistake in announcing a withdrawal date. They should not have done. They should have worked on it. They should have prepared the group they wanted to share power with the Afghan government. They have strengthened the Afghan forces, and then after making the preparation, handing over everything to them, then suddenly they should have announced that we are leaving now, and they should have left after handing over things to them.
Right.
But the problem with people from the West is, and it is a huge problem in everything we see. I remember there was this French diplomat who became a good friend. We remained in touch for years. He came to Islamabad and met me, and I was wearing shalwar kameez, and he laughed. He said, "Well, this is a strange dress. Why do you wear it?" And he was wearing jeans. And his name was Bruce. I said, "Bruce, let the summer come and then I'll talk to you." And that was like this was April. I met him in June and he was wearing shalwar kameez. I said, "What happened?" He said, "Man, I had rashes all over my body." I said, "Yes, that is why we wear shalwar kameez." You see, so that is the thing. This happened before too with Najibullah. There was this UN person. I think he was from Sweden, Benon Sevan,
Mhm.
who was the UN special representative for Afghanistan. Remember?
Right.
Benon Sevan.
Yeah, I remember.
He went to Kabul. He met President Najibullah. came back to Islamabad and held a huge press conference with lunch and everything, and I was also there. And he announced that Najibullah has agreed to step down on such and such date. The next day, Rahimullah Yusufzai, you know him, right?
Hmm.
He's a very famous Pakistani journalist and one of the
Yeah, yeah.
best experts on Afghanistan. He knows
Right.
Afghanistan in and out. And people in Afghanistan know him too. So he wrote a piece saying that Mr. Sevan has signed Dr. Najibullah's death warrant because this is Afghanistan is not Sweden, is not Britain, that even after a party loses elections, it stays in power until the day it transfers power to the next winner. It doesn't happen like that in our part of the world, especially in Afghanistan. The day you announce you're leaving, everybody will turn against you, and then in within weeks you will find that you are standing alone, and everybody has turned against you. And Binan Sevan did another press conference saying that Najibullah, what is just because he's a Pashtun, he thinks he knows Afghanistan. I know Afghanistan better and blah blah, and nothing is going to happen. But this is how it exactly happened. You remember they deserted Najibullah, and he was
Yeah, yeah.
arrested and put in the UN compound, and then finally killed
Right.
very brutally. So when they announced the withdrawal date, they made a huge mistake.
I see.
They should not have done that. And that is why, I mean, just Taliban are not just being arrogant. I think that is why people are deserting like the way they are, and people are joining or running away because they know what happens in Afghanistan.
I think the US appears to have made the calculation that they just couldn't care less about this now.
Hmm.
They've been at it for 20 years. It's not worth their while. It doesn't pose a direct threat. If Afghanistan tries something, then they can always attack in different ways rather than just being there physically, right?
True, true. They said that. You remember in the
Yeah,
statement
yeah,
they made? It
yeah.
said that we have achieved our objective and we have uprooted Al Qaeda, and now we are in a position. If ever any militant group is reformed in Afghanistan, we are in a position to go and destroy them without having troops on the ground. And they
Absolutely.
also said that though we were in Afghanistan and our soldiers were dying, but Afghanistan's neighbors were getting the benefit of it because that it was stopping the spread of
Right,
terrorism in their countries. Why should we, I mean, our soldiers die for them? Now there are no free lunches. If they
right.
want to protect their country, now they should go and fight.
Yeah. I mean, from the US standpoint, it makes perfect sense now.
Yes, but I, I also on this subject, I have had arguments with many Americans, and I always say that there is no such thing as a reluctant superpower.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
if you're
true.
a superpower, you have to get involved all the way, like the British and the French did.
Yeah.
I
Or
mean,
you announce that you are not a superpower in that
yeah,
moment
you
at
stop
all.
interfering and you stop your. I mean, immigration is very easy to discourage people from coming to America.
Right.
Stop showing America as a paradise in your movies. Stop presenting America as a paradise, and it will reduce. Because a lot of people who are quite well off in their countries, they come because they see America as a paradise. See, it is
True.
your decision. If you want America to be seen as a paradise, then remember, people want to go to paradise even after death.
True.
Similarly, if you're a superpower, you're a
Yeah.
superpower.
So stop hard selling, I
Mhm.
suppose.
Yeah.
As Afghan forces continue to withdraw from various districts in the face of the Taliban onslaught, there is a growing feeling within Afghanistan that it has now been left to its own devices to fend for itself. As Anwar pointed out, unless Pakistan and India join hands and prevail, there is a distinct likelihood of a civil war breaking out. This in a country which has for decades seen relentless bloodletting. This is Mayank Chaya reports.